Welcome. With us today, we have Debbie from Florida. Now, Debbie, you were growing up and raising your kids in the Chicago suburb area, and I'm really excited to talk to you today because you completed the project, so to speak. Your kids are grown. So, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, Cheryl. Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to get into, let's start with how many kids you have, and then what made you even decide that you wanted to homeschool? Was it something that you always knew that you wanted to do or not? Because I know it's a new thing now since COVID, it's really kind of exploded. But
Mhm.
what back then made you think this is the way I want to go for my family?
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions, but
I know.
I have six children. So I'm,
Wow.
one of those that had a large family, and I'm intensely grateful. Uh, that was probably one of the best decisions I ever made was to have a large family. And I guess the reason my husband at that time was actually involved with some people who were the original pioneers of homeschooling. And so I started doing some research when I was actually even pregnant with my first child and trying to understand, what were the ramifications of making this choice? Because back then that was 1986. So I would have been kind of the second wave of homeschooling. The first wave were the ones who were very persecuted. I mean, some of them went to jail. There was a lot of stuff that went on. And at my time, that was when the Homeschool Legal Defense Association kind of came up and started supporting us, and we got organized. But I made that decision because I felt for me, I'm a religious, spiritual person, and I felt someone is going to teach my children. Someone's going to be spending time with them. And what values and things do I want them to learn? And so that would for me was the primary reason why I made that choice to do that.
Now, it's funny that you say that because an episode with Chris that I did a couple weeks ago, we talked about how I'm sorry, the education system is fairly recent. We think that it's been around for centuries, but it's really only since the early 1900s that it started rolling out. And then I more recently was reading about how
Mhm.
Nelson Rockefeller really got into it around 1943 or so, if I remember correctly, and taking it from the states and bringing it into a federal education system. And so
Mhm.
all the curriculums across the country would be the same. So, how did we as a country get from everybody was educated at home primarily, maybe went to school for 2, 3 years and then finished their education at home for their family's business to most recently, New York, I know people were in the 80s going to jail for homeschooling their
Mhm.
kids. You're right. Just like you said, they were getting persecuted. And New York was one of the last states, I believe, to remove that from being illegal. How did it go from one extreme to the other and so quickly? Have you looked into that?
I had at that time, I don't have the actual facts in front of me that I would dare to quote, but I would definitely say there was a very strong push to get people in line to a way that they wanted them. And, think about it. If you want people to end up with a certain point of view, where do you start?
Mhm.
You
The
start
kids.
as early as possible, as early as possible. So you get your Kindergarten, got from the Germans, which I've heard you reference in the past, and that was starting the children very, very young and getting them trained to be obedient, to be work well in a group, to be properly socialized to whatever the government wishes it to be outside of what the parent, the family unit is. So, yeah, the family unit is a very ancient unit. It is the foundation of everything. Everything is the family unit. And
Right.
so the government loves to come in and disrupt that process because what you have to understand is that education is inherently religious. It's religious. You are learning a doctrine. You are
Mhm.
learning a point of view. It is inherently religious. So whether you are a humanist, you are Catholic, you are Jewish, Muslim, whatever it is, however you want your children to learn, for me, I want the choice. I want everyone to have the choice to educate their children however they wish. They want to homeschool them, they want them in private school, they want them in public school. I don't care what choice you make as a parent, but you, the parent, needs to make that choice, not a government agent.
So
That's my
what
point of view.
sort of comments did you get when you, oh, sorry, my video there, it should come back. What sort of comments and say persecution from your family and friends did you get deciding to homeschool back in the 80s and early 90s? What was that like?
It was rough. I mean, my own family, my parents were school teachers at when they were younger, and then we were farmers. Actually, grew up on a farm in Ohio, and they were appalled that I was homeschooling my kids because they were teachers and they couldn't understand why I would possibly want to do that. And I remember when my oldest was kind of like a preteen, early teen years, and my dad grudgingly saying to me, "Well, your kids have kind of turned out okay in spite of the homeschooling." And it's just I experienced quite a bit of family thinking that we were weird and weirdos, and you know it was very isolating
Hmm.
outside of your homeschoolers, but it was a very isolating experience for sure, because people, once they found out you were homeschooling, they literally would pull their skirts up and walk away. Oh, we didn't want to be around you. Our children might get infected. That was the sort of situation that we had. So yeah, it was hard. It was, I won't lie to you, I mean, it was very difficult to
Yeah.
homeschool.
It's even hard now to come out to your family and say that. It literally
Yeah.
like you're coming out of the closet. We're gonna be homeschoolers. It's like, oh God, what will they do for socialization? Gee, I don't know. Go outside and meet people. So how did you find other homeschooling families? And in the Chicago area, were there some? I mean, in
Oh yeah.
thinking of it, I would think like, oh, down south there probably were, but up in Chicago, I would think that would be
Yeah, there
sparse.
were. Yeah, we actually lived in Chicago for part of that time. We were downtown, and we were we went. There was a very active homeschool group on the north side, and a lady there mentored me very actively. Kathy Custish, God rest her soul, she has since passed on, but she had 5 children, and they were all like 10 years older than me. So than my children, and so it was just lovely to have someone that I could mentor with, that I'd seen her kids make it through and successfully, and that was very powerful for me. And that would be a piece of advice for anyone that is wanting to homeschool, is to find a mom who's further along, preferably at least maybe 5, 10 years farther along than you are, that you can talk to. Maybe you can give back to them, watch their kids, or have their kids come over and clean your house, or whatever relationship you establish with them, that you're helping each other out. But that was a very powerful relationship with me, Kathy Custis. She was very, very powerful for me.
And that's been a theme, I think, of my episodes, not because I'm trying to do that, but a theme that I hear my guests say is I was mentored by someone further along. And it just shows like what a beautiful community that is. People aren't in it all about themselves. Like, okay, when my kids are out, I'm done. It's like the last woman that I had on, Becky, she was talking about how she was mentored, and then now she started my homeschool village, and so takes all the best advice that she was given, and now it's part of a program that she does as a business, and that's a big community right there. And I had on, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and look now, but women that have not only mentor others but even started, Tia, she's in Florida as well. She started Inner Bliss Sanctuary, and it's just this community. So it's even gotten to the point where people can make a business out of it, but doing what they've grown this
Yes.
passion for and educating, children from the home life. So that's beautiful. What kind of curriculums were around when you started and what did you use?
Oh goodness. We did everything. I mean, we tried it all, honestly. We did the workbooks when the kids were younger. We did Christian Liberty Academy. I'm sure they're still publishing. I did Saxon Math for a while. You just, as your children grow, different methods are come to play. So, for example, I had I had the six children, and so I kind of was able to break them into groups of three, the older two, the middle two, and the younger two, and do some of that where we would kind of learn, they would learn together. And that was very, very powerful. And one of the things I would strongly recommend is that you look into getting your children started at their local junior college, getting their high school and college credits at the same time. Because what I presented to my children was, um, do you want to do 4 years of high school and 4 years of college, or do you want to do dual enrollment and kind of knock out both at the same times? Because your first 2 years of college are essentially high school
Hmm.
material. So
Yeah, all your
your choice.
prerequisites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your choice. How do you wish to go through this? And so, surprise, most of them did choose to just start taking college courses at our local junior college. We have an excellent college, College of DuPage, and they were very, very welcoming to the homeschoolers. And so we had them in there, and they would just basically, take American history and all those different classes that they needed for prereqs. But then I would give them credit for high school at the same time.
So did they physically go to the college?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
pre-COVID. But it was good.
Yeah.
It was a way for them to start working with their peers and in a manner that they weren't there all day, but they're part of the day. And then we could tackle issues like, how the other girls were dressed. At that time, it was the super low jeans, like where they were like cut almost to the pubic bone, and then
Yeah.
the short shirts. And I remember my oldest daughter being like, well, I want to kind of like wear, I'm like, no, no, we're not wearing that.
No. And you don't need your butt crack hanging out.
Yeah,
Oh.
being the Debbie Downer, we don't need it if you lean over that we're going to see parts that yeah, we're not
Yeah.
going there. So, but it was good to tackle that with her in her teen years versus just sending her out into the wild, having not had any of those experiences and being like, good luck with that all, So
Yes.
it was a really nice way to gradually get your children into what their peers were doing. And I mean, the piece of advice I always told my kids is like, make your teens and 20s as productive as possible, with your education, your married life, your children, whatever you get going, because you will reap the benefit of that in your 40s and 50s. I said, because your peers, they don't think they need to grow up until they hit 30.
Hmm.
So if you are productive in your teens and your 20s, by the time you are 30, you're going to be a lot further along in life than they are.
Hmm.
And sure enough, they all are. They're all, I mean, my oldest is 36 and my youngest is 26.
Wow.
I mean, some of them have their houses paid for.
Oh, that's amazing.
Houses
Now,
paid for. Yeah.
back to the so there are colleges that high schoolers can go to without having like a college or a high school diploma or without being 18 or older.
Yeah, you can dual enroll. Usually your
Okay.
at least that's what I experienced at that
Okay.
time, that my local junior college was very welcoming to bringing in the homeschoolers. And, they were very helpful with that. I was very grateful for
Okay.
that.
Yeah, so like a 2-year school, they probably would offer something
Yeah.
similar. I've never looked
Yeah.
into that, but
Yeah.
again, there's
It's
probably
so
information
good.
that there are rules that are there to benefit us, but they don't want to tell you that, hey, we
Yeah.
have
And it
this
might
policy that you can
be
go.
Yeah, it might be state to state too. I just know in Illinois that our local junior
Sure.
colleges were very welcoming to the homeschoolers who were under 18, and it was great. It was super helpful for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so now, were there ever times that you said, maybe I made a mistake? What do I do? Oh, I mean, every parent, every homeschooling parent must have that, right? What, how did you get through that and know, no, this is the right decision for us? And even if it's not, it's the decision we're taking and we're going with it.
I think the way my brain works, I'm more of a data person and logical. And for me, I spent a lot of time studying it before I made the decision to do it. Literally when I was pregnant with my first child. So for me, it was a commitment that I had made very, very early on. And were there times that it was really difficult and really hard? Yes, it was because we struggled financially. For most of that time until my youngest got old enough that I was able to start a business and start working and bringing in income, we really struggled
Mhm.
financially. I remember there was a time when on I would work for a friend, another homeschooling friend who was more prosperous. Her husband and her owned a remodeling company, and I would watch her children all day on Saturday, and I got $100 cash. And
Mhm.
that is how I fed my children for the week. And I went there and I watched her kids, cleaned her house, ironed her clothes, cooked, did everything I could to help her. And I got cold hard cash for that. And then I was able to feed my kids and see them through the next week. So yeah, there were a lot of really difficult times. That we went through as a family, but it was me and my kids against everybody else. We were very tight. We were our own tribe, and it was for me. I loved getting to know each and every one of them on a very deep level, and to look at their individual giftedness and give them opportunities to explore that. Because, and I've heard this as a theme with your other moms that have been on on your show, on your podcast. You know, in the morning it's like, hey, hit your books hard, let's power through what we got to get through, and then the rest of the day you do what you are interested in. If
Mhm.
it's geography, astronomy, playing your flute, whatever that is, then you get to deep dive into that for the remainder of the day. And I found that that's enabled my children as adults. They've really reaped the benefit of that. I mean, just for example, my oldest is the chief technical officer at a concrete company in Chicago. And his passion was he liked taking things apart and the computer stuff. So we would literally drive around in the neighborhood, pick up all the junk computers on the side of the road. I got him a little soldering kit, all these little
Wow.
robot things so he could learn how to do all that stuff. And he
Wow.
has a extremely successful career doing that now, making buku bucks. And that all started when he was like 8,
Wow.
and so, and then one of my other sons, he has his own a very successful entrepreneur, and he got started doing all that stuff when he was really young too, having his own business and being interested in that, and he always knew he wanted to be his own businessman, and here he is, very successful. And he didn't go to college. He did some college, but he didn't get a degree. But
Mhm.
he had all of that time. He was able to get, we call that 10,000 hours in his teens,
Wow.
learning and mastering a craft. So to me, that it's so powerful to get on the other end of that and to see your children taking those passions and that giftedness that they had at a very young age and converting it. Here we are 10, 15, 20 years later and being like, oh my gosh, they're actually making a living at this and enjoying their lives, because their work is their passion, it's their calling, instead of, oh, I got a job.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing what they love, and it's really incredible to see.
That, and I'm going to have to kind of work those into my questions as I talk to my guests, because that is a really amazing concept. And as you're talking, I'm thinking back to my childhood, and my parents were government workers, and it was, you better go take an exam as soon as you qualify. Go take an exam. Go take an exam. And what's the exam? It's standardized test,
Hmm.
and a little quote is like, you have the right answer, the wrong answer, and then the answer they want you to pick. And
Yeah.
everybody understands, they don't want you to pick the right answer. They want you to pick the one they've trained you, or the one that they want their workers to pick, so that they can have these just, worker bees, obedient workers, fit in the mold. And that was because that's all my parents knew. And so they knew to just push
Mhm.
that on me. You need a pension, you need health insurance. And those were the important things, because I went through the public school system and state school. And, so I did follow in the footsteps, because I didn't have, and I've mentioned this before on my shows, I didn't have any course in school that said, these are all the jobs out there. Here's all of them. Or even, here's a few streams. Let's take a dive down and see how many venture off into that. And it's funny because, and this is like not even meaning to promote, but the Tuttle Twins, which is my affiliate, but we were reading The Miraculous Pencil to my son the other night, and in the first page, it's like, oh, you don't know, nobody in the world knows how to make a pencil. And of course, the kids are like, why don't we know how to make a pencil? Then how are pencils made if nobody knows how to make a pencil? But what the book gets into is that so many different people have different parts of the job, and even up into, whatever tractor or whatnot they use to cut down the trees, somebody had to make that tractor too. So, there's so many moving parts to each little thing. And I just
Mhm.
don't think that school, public education, or probably not even private, but standardized school really dives into all the things you could possibly do when you're an adult to earn a living. And it really is, it's sad. And so for that to be like the main purpose of homeschool, I think that's worth it right there. Because, sure, it's 18 or 22 years of schooling, but then that's for the rest of your life until you retire. And the retirement age
Yeah.
keeps getting higher and higher. So it's like, you might be working forever. You might as well be doing something you really, really love. And I
Yeah.
school just doesn't provide that. There are a few people, I'm sure, that graduate from public school and do something they really love. My husband, I know
Mm.
he does, but um that's happenstance. That
That's a happy accident for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, and I think as parents, it's difficult to not put our own preconceptions of who our children are
yeah,
on them. And that was something that I really wanted them to, to look at them for who they were, and to observe them, and to whatever they seem to gravitate to, even on when I had no money, just make it happen with, and then I had to go dumpster dive, or, whatever we had to do to get the things that they needed to explore what the interest of the day. And I had a child who had a different interest every week, and that was fine. That was fine. It was good. We did the fish. We did all of that stuff, and it was awesome. But it's just it's really hard as parents to step back and observe your children and say, wow, this kid is really musically talented. And what can I do to facilitate that for them? Because we're their chief facilitators. And when I did start working, I owned an educational company that was very large and very successful. I had thousands of students, served thousands and thousands of students in the Chicago area. And that was one thing I sat in on very many student teacher meetings and IEPs and 504 plans. And that's the thing, is that they're not, even for all the intervention that they're getting, we're still not looking at where are they going to end up?
ah,
Where is
that's
that career?
wow,
Where are we
yeah,
seeing that? that giftedness, because for every child who is on the spectrum, who is got a disability, usually giftedness comes hand in hand with some disability of some kind, whether it's sensory issues or whatever, that they typically come together. And so being very mindful of that as the homeschooling parent it's super important. And but just take, even in our own imperfections and our own brokenness as parents, we still can do a better job than anyone in school that doesn't have any skin in the game. For the high school guidance counselor who's got 300 kids that he's guiding through high school, you still, as the parent, there's so many tools and things available for you to help your child discover their passions. You're going to do a far better job than they would be getting in the school. So just take comfort in that. Even with our own limited abilities, we're still going to do a better job. Trust me, you will, for sure.
Yeah. And how, I mean, that really clicked with me with you saying that. These, like you said, the 504, all these IEPs. I don't have an
Mm-hmm.
education, uh, I didn't go to school for that or anything, so I'm not familiar with all the terminology. But how much of that is just to complete the checkbox that you did it for
Mm-hmm.
funding purposes from the government so that your school can get more funding, and and to pass the student on to the next grade, versus find out what they're really gifted in and how they could make a living. Like whatever it may be. I mean, it could be an engineer, it could be being able to be, bagging at a grocery store, but something to give a purpose that they might like that. But to get them into some sort of career, to feel like they have a purpose in life, and how so much of it is just to push along, and okay, so they're not my problem anymore. And that's even just
Yeah.
kids that don't have disabilities too. I can see
Oh, yeah.
teachers, like, okay, it's June, you passed, you're not mine anymore. And
Yeah,
there
yeah. It's
there are great teachers out there. I'm friends with so many of them, but they'll tell you themselves they are under resourced, understaffed, and they're doing all they can to get by.
exactly, exactly. And that's the thing. I have children that definitely had like attention deficit issues and ADHD, and I did not I didn't dope them up. I mean, I did not go get them on Ritalin or any of that. What I chose to do was they were boys, give them plenty of time to get outside and move around and blow off some steam before I expected them to come back in and sit down. And I just told them, I said, look, this is a gift. If you feel you're having trouble focusing, just think about, you're looking around the room, you're picking up on all sorts of information and data. How can you use that? Like I would read about like, oh, people who are like this. Oh, well, they make wonderful detectives because they're able to like look around a room and they're picking up all of this information, where someone who's a little more centered or focused like me, it's like, oh, I didn't see that. What's that over there?
Wow.
And so there's just, to me, I didn't want them to feel like they needed a pill to be good. I wanted them to be like, hey, you were created like this. This is how you came out. And you know what? We're all have different levels of giftedness here and deficits here, but those are beautiful things that we can put together to make you uh, a very productive adult,
Yeah.
doing things you enjoy doing, that because you want to do things for work that are easy, that it's not easy, but that it's enjoyable to you. Because if you're asking someone to do things that they don't enjoy doing, then it really feels like work. Like if
Hmm.
you're a person who doesn't enjoy numbers, and I say to you, hey, I want you to spend the day working on some like accounting spreadsheets and like doing all the macros and figuring all that stuff out, you might just go, why? And so that's the thing, with your children, there's different things that they find more enjoyable to do, and you want to make sure they're expressing and finding those things, and then ultimately bringing them to work that pulls all that together.
Yeah, I'm like blown away right now because I'm just thinking about, I don't know. It makes me sad thinking of all the kids that are being pushed through, and it's not the parents' fault either. I was guilty of it too, thinking, "Oh, I'm a woman. I need to work." I remember saying or thinking to my about my sister who stayed home with her kids, like, "Well, what are you doing that's productive to society?" And then
Oh,
now I look at it, I said, "Well, she was doing the most productive thing. She was making sure her children were taken care of." I mean, her kids
yeah.
went to public school, but she was, there
Mhm.
to make sure they were on the bus, off the bus, doing all the things that, they weren't like shuffled around, making sure homework and stuff was done, and making sure food was on the table. That's a huge thing. And, just what when you think about, I've discussed it before, the women's movement, we think that that is to empower women. And I'm sure some women that were getting, beaten and cheated on and couldn't leave because women, weren't in
Mhm.
the workforce. Yeah, it
Mhm.
helped out some, but it went so far the other way that it made us think we were not productive members of society if we chose to stay home with our family and make sure that they were taken care of, well fed. And as you were talking about, your kids just needed to go out and play. And how many
Mhm.
kids are put on medication when it is just they need to go get their exercise out first. They need to have a certain amount of water intake. How many kids are dehydrated, and and adults included, are just
Mhm.
dehydrated, and that has so many negative impacts on us. And how many kids are just not getting enough nutrients? They're getting sugar, they're getting that red dye 40 or whatever that's going to their brain and making them nuts. And I was just talking to a homeschooled kid the other day, and he's telling me, he's like, "Oh, I can't have apples because of the high fructose content." He said it makes me go a little nuts. And I'm like, wow, apples, I didn't think that that could be bad for you. But some kids have a little bit of an intolerance to the fructose in certain fruits, apples being one of them. And our doctors, our pediatricians are not talking to us about that. You go in for your
Yeah.
appointment, it's these are the shots you're due today, and here is your pamphlet, your piece of paper to take home so you can read about the shot that I just gave your, no, I'm sorry, you can read about the 8 shots that I just gave your kid, and then we're going to say that we've checked all the boxes and dotted our I's, crossed our T's, everything's said and done. And I just might, I have so much anger in me for the way this setup has become, but also like, I'm happy that I have started this podcast where we can kind of open each other's eyes to this. And man, how different our country and our world could be if we were all on board with these bits of information.
Well, yeah, it starts in the home. The home is the basic governmental unit. And so everything starts in the home and it builds out from there. And and that's where you get started. So I think I think the fact that so many people have homeschooled in the past. I mean, some of my kids are homeschooling. I have 10 grandchildren, and two of my children are homeschooling. So I have 8 grandkids who are either going to be homeschooled or are in the process of being homeschooled.
Oh, that's
So
so
this to me
cool.
is really cool. Yeah, it's really cool to see that happening. And then I have a couple of granddaughters who aren't. And I'm completely cool with that because that doesn't work for their family. But again, the choice. We
Yeah.
have the choice. And that's the thing with women and going back to, oh, you're not in the workforce or whatever. I think it's important that other women acknowledge that, hey, you have the choice. And I support your choice to either work or stay home or do some sort of fusion of that. And because that's important, as part of the greater sisterhood, is that we do that we're supportive of each other and that we have those conversations. I did experience, a lot of that where, well, you're not working, you're a breeder, and you're having all these kids. And I always said, well, you know what? They're all going to be paying your Social Security. And when you get older, and they all have jobs and they all pay their taxes, they're
Hmm.
every single one of them has a job paying into that system for the rest of us. So yeah, it's just we just need to be supportive. I think as women, I think there's been a lot of divisiveness, and now, more on the other side, I'm having a second career, and it's been really great to do that without, having children at home. And I'm really enjoying myself. But again, it's like, I think as women, we just need to remember that famous quote is that, we can have it all. We just can't have it all at the same time. And and it's no amount of leaning in is going to make that work, where you've got some high powered career, and then somehow you've got, two or three kids, and everything's going to be perfect. It's very difficult to pull all of that off, unless of course you have a host of nannies and personal assistants, to help you with that sort of thing. Most of us do not have that. I definitely did not have that when I had my six children. Did
I'm
not have
willing
that.
to bet even the Kim Kardashians who have that are still not raising their kids as well as you raised your six.
And I'm very proud of my kids. I love them all very deeply. And I think what's really important is that we've made that, you need to, as a parent, make that successful transition from parent authority figure, like you will respect me and then you will love me.
Yeah.
I was a hard ass, but somebody had to be in charge. It was either them or me, and it was going to be me. But I was just like, you have to make that transition from that role to trusted counselor. And I am their trusted counselor, and they are my trusted counselors. When I have issues or questions, I ask them because they know me the best of anyone out there. And they give me excellent advice. Excellent advice. And I don't always follow it, but they give me really good advice. So it's great when that's the type of relationship that we have now. And it's beautiful.
So how did you deal with kind of the disciplinary issues and the qualms between siblings as you were homeschooling and raising them? Because there is, your teacher, but you're also parent, and how did you navigate that?
Ooh. you know, for me, what was most important is that my children were friends. At the end of the day, I love that. At the end of the day, that they were friends. And I was like, you all need to get along with each other, because right now that other little friend seems more important or whatever. But I will tell you, in 20 years, that other little friend's probably not going to be around. Who's going to be beside you? Who are you going to want to talk to? It's your brothers and sisters. So I just really wanted them to get along with each other, and I made that a priority. And there were a few times, and they still talk about this, where we were supposed to have a play date, and the kids were all fighting each other, and we were all in the van. We were loaded up, ready to go, and they were bickering. The Bickersons were going at it. And I said, oh, that's it. We're turning around. We're going home because you aren't getting along with each other. So we are not going to go on that play date. And so I backed it up. It wasn't fun doing that, but they are all close. To this day, they are close. They love each other. They all have very different lifestyles and very different things they do with themselves. But in spite of all of that, they all, even though they have different outlooks on life, they are respectful of one another and loving of one another. And to me, that it's a beautiful thing. We did a Zoom call last week, kind of like an early Mother's Day thing, and I just sat back and I watched, and it was hilarious. It was just like the Brady Bunch, everybody's in there
That's what I
naked
was thinking in
comment.
my head is the beginning of the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, snarking, grandkids walking through, somebody
Oh.
screaming in the back. It was awesome. I just sat there and I just I just giggled. I literally giggled for about 90 minutes straight, just watching them interact and talk to each other. And it was a lot of fun. So
That's
yeah,
got to be
I love it.
such a nice feeling to think of like, I created this. I'm the matriarch that made these people who then made, the kids of their own and just the legacy that you're seeing,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
And it's cool because they call me GM. So that's for my nickname is the Grand Matriarch, the Grand Matriarch. So, but it is. I love that role. I love supporting them and, praying for them and knowing that they're all, I mean, this is the thing as women, I think we have forgotten the power. What is our ancient power? I'm going to say traditional. We don't want to go there. We say ancient. What's our ancient power? Our power is our procreative ability. And
Yeah.
we have spurned it. We have wasted it away. We give it away. We don't protect it. We don't appreciate it. And it is compared to men, we have a very limited window to
Yeah.
procreate as women. And so I'm actually going to be starting a conversation about that myself because I've had several of my children say to me, like, Mom, young women need to hear about this because
Yeah.
they're not hearing anything in culture that is encouraging them to want to be wives, to want to be mothers. And so that's something that I'm going to start a conversation about. Public service announcement. We're not going to get political.
I would happily be part of that with you as someone who fell victim to that and um, was lived the crazy life in my 20s, and I was married in my 20s, a very rash decision, and then divorced, and then met my husband at 29, and those first couple years really settled me down. I mean, I was into the wanted to live in New York City and this and that, and now I'm like, I just want to you can see my polyface micro book back here from Joel Salatin. I want a little farm. I want to have the regenerative farming where the animals are moved every day. And I just had my second child. I'm 39 and I wish I had more time. I would probably have more. I didn't nurse
Mhm.
my son, or I gave up after 3 weeks. Now my daughter, I'm still nursing her at 9 months, and it's
Cool.
like the most beautiful thing. And my
Mhm.
mother says to me the other day, I had an Instagram reel about it. She goes, "Oh, well, at least in 3 months you can give her real milk." And I'm like, because this is how I grew up, right? Like this is. I was like, well, what is it that you think I'm producing? Like, do you think that back in the ancient times, like women were just waiting for their kid to become one so they could give them real milk from a cow? Like that's not. And just seeing the difference of even just the bonding that there is to nursing versus bottle fed. And
Mhm.
I'm not putting any bottle fed babies down. My son was bottle
Yeah,
fed,
that's right.
but I'm seeing the difference. And it's like, oh my God, if I only knew with him the decisions I'm making with my daughter are, and that's just one thing. It's so
Yeah.
different. And yeah, so I totally was victim to that whole, gotta have a job and I gotta have a pension and I gotta
Yeah.
retire. Why? So
Oh
at
yeah.
55, I can do what? My kids will be grown when I'm 55. And
Yeah.
my mother's 75 and still works because she's bored. So like,
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
plenty of time to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we have to understand is that in our modern time is that your adulthood is from 18 to 98. That's 80 years. That's
Hmm.
80 years. So I am technically at the halfway point of my adult years. I have
Hmm.
another 40 years of life doing what? Well, I'm doing what I want to do. I mean, I have my own company. I speak on artificial intelligence and machine
Ooh.
learning. I mean, I'm doing all sorts of fun, cool stuff. And that's what I'm doing now. Oh, oh, and I had 6 kids. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a time and a place for everything. And just, when you're young and your body is bursting with fertility and energy and all those beautiful things you have in your 20s, that's the time to find Mr. Right and get married. And then you will be a very young mother, a very young grandmother, and then you can go kick it and do whatever you want in your 50s and beyond and have whatever other life you want. But those years when your children are young, you never get them back.
You're right.
You never get that time back.
Yeah, I wish I had more.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
I don't
like
wish.
I'm not ready for a third right now, but I'm running, we've
Yeah.
already had issues with pregnancy because I'm at, the tail end of the
Right.
30s. Now let me ask you this. Okay, so you have and you can tell us a little bit more about your work now if you want to, but my question being I'm running into okay, so we have the curriculums for homeschool, like you were discussing before, and
Mhm.
now we are getting into curriculums that are online. And you mentioned you do
Mhm.
work with artificial intelligence, which it doesn't necessarily relate, but kind of all of the yes, the computer stuff. Tell me about, I know that there are some worries that the
Mhm.
government wants us to be homeschooling so that our kids can be one-on-one in front of a screen and then they can put, whether it be subliminal messaging or make them think a certain way or to track them or whatnot. So I'm just gonna, you know what I'm talking about. You're nodding your head. So go ahead and tell me.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I have an academic paper on all that stuff that Chat GPT and stuff is all about. So I'm highly familiar with natural language processing. And what you have to recall, what you have to understand is that it's called machine learning for a reason, because the machine is learning. It learns off data that is inputted into it. So whatever Chat GPT or these other AIs are putting out to you as output when you make a query, they are merely digesting concepts and point of views that have been uploaded into it. It is not free thinking and making new associations. It is merely pulling that data. So here's where we get into an issue. For me as a homeschooling mom, it was very important that were certain things I wanted my children to understand. First was critical thinking skills. Very important that they had critical thinking skills. Okay. That was check that box. Very important. The second thing is excellent communication skills. So we did for speech and debate, forensics. God help me. Boy, once I opened that door up, I had to make sure I had logic behind everything I said because I was going to be queried on it. But that has been very powerful for them as adults to have that ability to not only have critical thinking skills, but to also express themselves. Because I always said, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you cannot express it, no one gives a rip. It's just going to stay tumbling around in your head. So those were the things. So that brings me back to where the danger is with AI interfacing with your child. Because what they want you to do is they want you to be able to craft the correct questions to ask the AI.
Okay.
Is that learning? Is that learning just so you know how to craft a question? Say, please chat GPT, can you tell me how to find the author of XYZ? Whatever. Is that learning critical thinking skills?
No.
No, that's just learning how to properly construct a question. That's not helpful. So yeah, I am not, even though I'm a credentialed data scientist, I have a master's in data science and I speak on it. I am not in favor of artificial intelligence teaching children,
So are
especially
there
from the
certain
government,
curriculums we
from the
should be
government.
steering away from, or is it like parents just have to be involved to watch? Like
Well,
if they're doing something
I,
on the computer, sit with them.
yeah, Well, I think you have to understand who's the source. What
Mhm.
we did, one of the things, and this is my mentor, Kathy Kustish, did is the great ideas. And essentially, what we were doing is we were having the children when they were older, early teens, read the great books, the great thinkers of Western civilization, read the original documents, and then ask questions from that, and then they would have to do essays or whatever using their own minds, their own critical thinking skills to pull information from all of the great thinkers, Descartes, Aristotle, Socrates. To me, that would be something that an AI could do, use the Socratic method. Oh, hey, I'm getting an idea for a company. But use the Socratic method to basically have your children read the great thinkers, and then using the Socratic method, have the AI start asking questions of the student and getting their responses. Now, that to me would be a use that would be appropriate because you're pulling stuff from the great thinkers. But to have the government have, because they want sheeple, they want people they can control who are, oh, we all need to be on the same page thinking, and oh, I can't hear other ideas. Oh my God. I mean, that's the beautiful thing of a true liberal arts education is that you're pulling in all of these thinkers from all times, and you're pulling out nuggets of truth, and you're interacting with that. And that is what we want our children to do, is to know their past and to pull it into today, interact with it, and bring great new insights for culture today, not be told, by government, this is where you need to be. We don't need that. And that's not what made our country great. It's having a lot of little, robots running around out there. And that's a lot easier to control, isn't it, Cheryl? That's a
Absolutely.
lot easier to control, right?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
This is the
Well,
interesting thing. Well, about it. Here's what the Homeschool Legal Defense did. They did a survey of all of their students when they graduated, and they found that they excelled on every level compared to their public school kids. The only thing that they were different on that was seen as a negative is that they questioned authority. And
so
I'm glad, because they would question me, especially once they got that speech and debate stuff in. But that was good because then I had to think and back up, why am I asking them to do this? Oh, yeah. Or, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But that was good. That's what you want where you want your children to end up.
yeah, it would be interesting to see in that study how many of them wore masks in the last 3 years. Get some data on that. I don't think we'll see that data.
No.
Oh my goodness. So, what is the work that you're doing now? Does it relate to homeschool, or you've gone kind
No,
of into?
actually not. I mean, I have a pretty deep educational background, but I'm actually not doing anything with that right now. I'm working in the sales and marketing space with innovative software solutions for that, and I sell. I'm on an enterprise level and also working on some government contracts too. So that's what I do now. It's a
Well,
lot of
that's
fun.
great to hear though, because like you were saying, we are told, I guess, oh, you need a job right out of college, or else the world's gonna, fly by and you're not gonna be able to pick it up once you're 50. But clearly, that is not the truth. It is just it's just you wanting to find what you're interested in and then learning about it. And the same thing, I mean, even for a podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasting, but I had an idea and I was like, let's try this. And at 39 I was able to figure out, and I'm still working on figuring out Instagram, but that's a different beast. But just the podcast itself and editing and all that, it's like, well, I didn't need a college degree for that. I mean, I have a 4-year degree, but it wasn't in podcasting. I don't think we had podcasts back in 2006, maybe, but I wasn't listening to them. But you can learn the things that you want, especially with the internet and chat GPT that will just tell you how to do it. Which is
Exactly.
Yeah, the college. So, how do you feel about college and university? I know you said your one son didn't even need it. Do you think for parents that homeschool, should that even be an end goal for us? Or should it just depend? Like, are we going to spend all this time raising our children for them to go into university and then be brainwashed there? Do they even need it? Do they need it sometimes, depending on what they want to get into?
Yeah, that's an excellent question and an excellent concern. I found all my children did different paths. I had one who finished a master's at the age of 19, and then others that, did some of the junior college and then never finished and are still doing very, very well financially. So I think it's a choice that you have to see the type of career that your child is well suited for. And again, you have that additional time to think through that. Some children are going to be attorneys, some are going to be in the medical profession. But if they're interested in business, the best thing for them is obviously hands-on, starting their own business. If you have a home business yourself, getting them engaged. We had them all involved in our home business, and it was very powerful for them to see, how, oh, we have 300 employees, how do we manage that, for them to be on the front lines, to be driving to sites, observing, taking notes, just doing stuff. It was very, very powerful for them to experience that. So I just think every child is unique. And yeah, it is a concern about them getting brainwashed, but I really loved easing them into that with that, dual enrollment for high school with the local junior college. To me, that was great. And then what we did is they went at that time, they did that where they did all the work at Thomas Edison State College, and then they were able to get a 4-year degree. And I think out of pocket, it cost us under $10,000. So
Wow.
none of our kids had any college debt coming out, which again was a major leg up for them. So when they were buying a house or doing whatever, they didn't have any school loan debt. Didn't have any of it because we were able to cover that as we went along.
And then how did they, friends is one thing, but sometimes I think about things like, oh, how would my son ever like meet a girlfriend or whatever? But then I started thinking, well, do I need him to even think about girlfriends before he's 18 or whatnot? Like, did your kids date? Did they go to proms or anything?
They did. I mean, that was like
They found
that was back when.
spouses. Since you have grandchildren, they obviously found spouses.
Yeah, that was that when that Josh Harris book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, was big. And so there was the kind of like the courting talk and stuff. Um, we actually went to church with a couple places where there was a plethora of homeschoolers. So that kind of like the parents were all kind of on the same page. But I remember, and this is a funny anecdote, but I remember going to a speech and debate tournament, and this one mom was like upset that her son, who was like 19 or 20, wanted to get married, to his girlfriend. And I said to her, I said, uh, okay, so you don't want them to sleep together before they get married, but then you want them to have this long engagement, and then you're upset that they want to kind of get married earlier. I'm just like, it's kind of like it's really hard, if you're a young person. I mean, no judgment on anybody, but you have like this extended engagement, just so you're a proper age, or 23 or whatever, and then you expect your children to remain virgins. It's just kind of like, how's that going to work out? So
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, people change a lot. I mean, I had three children. Three of them got married pretty young. Like, I think they were like 20, somewhere between 21, 23, which is considered very young now. But, of those two marriages have been successful. One, unfortunately, did get divorced, but it happens. I mean, I'm divorced. I got divorced.
Yeah,
So
it
that's a whole
happens.
nother topic, too. It happens, it happens. It wasn't something I wanted to have happen, but it happens after 33 years. So it does. And, you just trust that your kids will make good choices, but, you don't want to. I just think every child is different, and we just have to have that mindset and that compassion, because we were young once too.
Yeah.
And there's certain things you don't want them to be doing, then you kind of have to put some guardrails up, and not like hope it's all going to work out. If you leave your kids alone for 4 hours in your house and go, I hope nothing bad happens.
Yeah, 50-50, your house will be burned down when you come home.
But it's just like, you just have to make that decision with with the other parent,
Yeah.
and talk to your kids. I mean, that's all you can do, and pray, and trust that they'll make wise choices.
Yeah, and I think, this day and age, the internet is so big that you can easily, kids, I feel like they
Mhm.
don't even date kids that go to their own school. Like, it's not cool. I got to meet her on Snapchat, or whatever
Oh,
it is.
yeah. And
So,
those dating apps are, oh, I think I did the 40 days on that. And that was just, I was like, you're just like, I'm
yeah.
never going to do that again. So I feel bad for kids that that's how they meet people. It's so unnatural compared
Yeah,
to what
and
we have.
it's funny because I wonder if homeschool, like, it's one of these preconceived notions that homeschoolers are not going to be dating because, oh, where are they going to meet anybody? They're not socialized. But they might actually have an easier time because homeschoolers are used to having conversation. They're not
Yes.
shy. They will, when I had my
No.
interview with Anna, she's a homeschooled student that's 17, and she's like, oh, yeah, you can tell the ones that went to public school because in our camp, they don't interact really. They're like on their phones.
Good.
So homeschoolers can have the conversations that kids that are generally, not all of them, but generally go to public school, they're used to sit and be quiet. You're not here to talk. You're here to learn. Everybody stop talking. And then when they have their recess time, they are on the phones.
Mhm.
I would imagine that's how it generally goes. So they don't have that face-to-face interaction as homeschoolers might be more comfortable having the face-to-face to where they would actually meet someone and say, do you want to go on a date? I don't know if people even date anymore. I don't know. I think that was phasing out in the early 2000s when I was
Yeah.
when I was in school graduating.
Yeah. I think there's with the homeschoolers, they tend to want to do things in person and in
Hmm.
groups. And I think for young people, that's the perfect way to meet, other
Yeah.
people. Because I know in the speech and debate tournaments, we'd be at a different city for like 3 days straight. And so the kids were all together from like 7 in the morning to like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, rolling around and talking. And it was awesome. I mean, they got to interact, and it was really, really great. A really,
Oh,
really great
that's fun.
experience. So I do think the homeschoolers with the different activities and stuff, the face-to-face interaction is super powerful. I think as you were mentioning, a lot of young people have gotten away from that. But yeah, I think there's hope for us for sure. And
Absolutely.
I wasn't like super concerned about who my children would marry. I just wanted them to know who they were as people, and to be very strong in themselves and know themselves before they got into a relationship. I think that's really important. And that can happen when you're fairly young. And for some people, it takes longer. I mean, I have
Yeah.
two children that are unmarried, that are 26 and 28, and they're not in a super big hurry, but now one of them's in a serious relationship and the other one's looking. So it all happens at different times for all of them. They're each their own person.
Well, and I think that is a huge thing that has to do with it is if you know yourself, if you didn't spend
Mhm.
your every, year in your developmental stages being told that, this is how you need to think, this is what you need to do every day. You get up, you go here, this is what we're going to learn. This is what you
Mhm.
need to know for a test. And then, you go to your sport and then you go home and go to bed. Like when you have the time as a homeschooler to really learn about your passions and this and that, you're not
Mhm.
necessarily you're learning what you like and learning about yourself, like you said. You're learning more of a like a comfort within that I don't need somebody else to make me happy because I can make myself happy. And then when you find out what makes you happy and you're ready to settle down, you're just that much more apt to have something that's more lasting than, okay, well, I feel like my first marriage was like, well, I'm single at this age, you're single at that age. So I guess we should just get married because that's what my friends are doing. I have the fear of missing out. I would like to have a wedding dress too, and a party. And so, yeah, that I never really thought about that aspect with the homeschoolers, but that is really something to delve into. I'm gonna, yeah, maybe a book idea someday. Um, is there
Right.
anything else? Because we're up on over an hour now. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that we talked about?
Yeah, I would just say I don't regret it. It was, like I said, the best decision for me, for my children, was to homeschool them, and I got to know them deeply. And I sure could I have been making money. I was a stockbroker for a little under a year or two after I graduated. I could have been making more money doing other things, but I don't regret. I loved that time with my children, and it has eternal value. And my life, I consider myself the richest woman in the world, Cheryl. Literally the richest woman, because I have all of these people in my life that I would never have had if I hadn't met their father and gotten married. So I feel very, very blessed and very grateful.
Yeah, and if you had stuck with the job that was, high paying but demanding of your time and your
Yes.
energy, your
Yes.
thinking, because when you're home with your kids, you're probably thinking, "Oh crap, I forgot to do that today. Oh, I got to get that done for
Mhm.
Monday morning." So you're like half there, and that's a big thing for me, like letting go of,
Mhm.
the I guess the financial aspect of it, um and being present that money will come
Mhm.
at any age
Yeah.
when you try.
Yeah, it
Oh,
will.
that's beautiful.
Trust me. Yeah, trust me. Yeah. You can always make money, and you've got a good foundation with your education and everything. But you're in the weeds right now, Cheryl. I mean,
Hmm.
I was fortunate enough that my daughter had me at her place with her four children. She's got four kids, 11 to like a year and a half. I mean, you're in the trenches right now,
Hmm.
and you have all of these children. They're so small, and you just have to, like you said, let go and enjoy, because it goes by so fast and
Yeah.
it's gone. And so all the time you're spending with your children now, it you will reap a beautiful blessing from that, and just enjoy the day. Because if you got one more thing done, like, oh, ooh, hey, you did a podcast today. Woo, you did more than just keeping two other people alive. Okay.
That's what it is too.
That's a
Just keep them
win.
alive.
That's a win. That's it. You had a winning day because you did one thing above that. You did a podcast, or you took the
Yeah.
kids to the doctor, or you did whatever. So you just have to have that mindset, because this too shall pass. And then you'll look back and
Yes.
go, "Oh, the good old days."
You are so
So
right. The
yeah.
good, because we're not even promised our years up until, 80, 90, 100. There's so many things that could happen. You just know. I thank you. So I needed
That's
to hear
right.
that
You
today, and I'm
know.
sure other people needed to too. So thank you so much for being here
You're
and for
welcome.
just giving us this. It is like a comfort hour here. I hope everybody else had that too. I get your coffee or cup of tea and just relax and know that like you're on the right path, or you
Yep,
can
you
be
are.
on the right path. And
Mhm.
and even for the people who can't stay home, just to take that time and really bond with your kids, to put down our phones. I'm guilty of it too, and really have that undivided attention and get to know them, because you're helping them form who they are right now. You're helping that. So when you have the phone in your hand, that's all they see is someone not paying attention to them. And I'm thinking of a million times I do this too. I'm not being a preacher. I'm trying to tell myself to put it down and be attentive, because, get on their
Mhm.
level and just show them that you're there for them. And I think our kids really all could benefit from that. Some water, get rid of the red dye number 40, and get them outside to play, and our kids would probably be these wonderful little little beings. Well,
Perfect.
thank you so much, Debbie. It was such a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Cheryl. My pleasure.